This one actually was my dad's when he was a kid. He'll probably get all grumpy and be like, I want my toy back right now. Sorry, Dad, I got it. What's up, people? So everybody enjoyed me getting out my 124 scale slot cars that I raced so much that actually had requests to get out the old antique ones from the attic and show those. So here they are, my 24 scale slot cars. Frankly, I haven't opened this box in so long, I don't even really remember everything that's in it. So it's gonna be fun for all of us, maybe. I'll try to go. Let's start with the top, huh? All right, ooh, yeah. Okay, so you can't even see that. That's okay. Let's start over here. Ooh, check it out. It is a Garvik thingy. This is a cool one. I can't even, oh gosh, I'm sorry guys. I know you slot car geeks are loving this, but frankly, I can't even remember the name of this thing. It's been so long. But I really enjoyed this one. This was came later in the evolution of 1960s slot cars. It's got a polycarbonate vacuum form body called the thingy. It was a lot more durable, and people got into the fashion of crazy shapes, kind of that George Barris, Ed Roth, futuristic GM prototypes kind of time period in automotive history, and it just made for really neat things. I really liked the Garvik designs from back then because they were really beautiful, they're really exciting, they had great looking metallic colors and such, and this was neat as an open wheel in the bubble cockpit, so I like that. This one has the aluminum chassis. I don't know if it's gold anodized or maybe clear coated or something, but it's neat that way. It's got the inline motor, of course, that big can motor, typical to the time period. And of course, the guide flag here that's on the swing arm. So this one, the wires are a little too low to pop a big wheelie, but the guide flag for the old wooden routed tracks was a way for that thing to kind of float like this and be better off. Of course, you can modify it so it'll pop a wheelie. And I just think that's so much fun. When I was a kid, that was the 80s, and slot cars were dead except for HO like this. So there was an old book, black and white, couple of them at my school's library that I would check out and see how you make old slot car tracks. I just thought that was so cool, a real racetrack in your attic or whatnot. Okay, let's keep going over here. Here is a controller from when I was younger. This actually has an ohm resistor, so you control the voltage through your wires to your model via these 3 leads. The third one is so you can have a reverse polarity and braking effect when you let off all the way. And then depending on your ohm resistor is how quickly the throttle comes on when you're in corners for different kinds of cars. So this is old school. Of course, the 60s cars we're talking about, the trigger controllers came out later. This is what I used in the 90s. They were around, I think, came out 70s and 80s and stuff. They were popular. And the older time ones used their thumb, but your thumb's not as smart as your trigger finger. So they evolved on that. And I think I've got one of those. So let's get into it. Okay, got a couple of bodies here. This is from the earlier days of the vacuum form stuff. Got a GTO that was kind of on an old car I bought. It was sort of beat up. I like kind of try to fix it up and use it on a model, but it's just kind of haggard. This one, gosh, was this monogram? This is actually one of Bob McKee's cars, the Plymouth-powered Hemi Can-Am car. Kind of neat. It's pretty beat up in terms of body, but still represents it pretty well. Maybe not something I'd be as super excited about in my collection to be prized out, and I don't actually have the correct chassis for it right now, but pretty cool. Over here, I've got a couple of, I think these are Strom Becker cars. Now, Strom Becker, when I was starting to collect, was neat because you can still get them pretty cheap. They're not as prized by collectors, but they got nice looking bodies. The chassis is kind of dumb. Okay, it's heavy, it's rudimentary. It's adjustable with screws depending on your wheelbase of your car. It's got an inline motor here. The guide flag is fixed. You can see in this one I put some lead tape to hold down the front. And it's got that, this is a hard ABS, like a hard model body. And that's why a lot of 124 scale models by places like Monogram or Revell, you could make into slot cars. In fact, some of the monogram models out there, which we're going to get into, in 124 scale, like a Chaparral or maybe a Ferrari or something from the 60s, the art on the box is still the same and the directions are still the same from the 60s. So if you get one of these models, it might actually even tell you how to build it into a slot car. So that's pretty neat. There's a Strom Becker hard plastic Cheetah. And you can see I put on some later foam tires because I actually raced this in a vintage slot car racing thing when I was in college, and I didn't want to lose, so I got that. This one, oh gosh, who makes this? I'm looking here. Ooh, this was a monogram. See, this is an example of what I just mentioned. This car, Actually, I kind of made it so it snaps on. This is a Porsche 904 body. Now this I bought as a monogram kit, 124 scale, and this is not antique. Like I bought this at a hobby shop, same kit from the 60s, and it even had the cockpit so I could build it as a slot car, just like what I was talking about. So monogram, real nice, gives you all the same fun as the 60s without breaking the bank on an original car. And then this was a just some sort of adjustable inline chassis I got with foam tires and old 60s wheels. It's got the drop swing arm on it, which is pretty cool. And I made it so basically the tension of the body snaps it on the chassis. Frankly, I don't know if I ever ran this car. I think I just kind of got to this point. I was like, yay, it's for my collection, hooray. I might have run it once or twice. But really neat looking, hard plastic monogram model, reflective of what, you know, hobbyists and such would have done in that time period. The hard plastic ones before all the vacuum form bodies really started to take out. Okay, we got a Ford GT here. This is an early one when Ford GTs were more influenced by Lola. You can see the more rudimentary body and aerodynamics and the high nose. I think you guys are all going to see this in the new Ford vs. Ferrari movie. But this is an early one. This is from the earlier time period of when 24 scale slot cars got popular. So you can see it's a hard plastic body. You can also date the design of the race car to when these first started coming out. And this is early 60s, okay? And the chassis, pretty rudimentary here. They didn't get super into performance. It's got this funky, like, proprietary motor that was probably used for, I don't know, an appliance in the 50s or something like that, and they made it work in a model car. But just really charming, really cool. Maybe not the fastest model of the time period, but a nice collector's piece. This is exactly the way I bought it. It survived the years pretty well. Okay, what's this? This is kind of neat. I think this is from a Strom Becker track. I just kept it around. It's a slide rule, basically. Made by Strom Becker. And this is where, you know, young people were smart back then. So, baby boomers, I know I ragged on you because you guys screwed up with your museums and they're all dying, which is true. Don't hate me. That's true. But you guys had really awesome toys. You got a lot of wisdom and a lot of experiences to share. That was the whole point of my video, that things like that can actually do something, but there's a major disconnect, okay? So, credit where credit's due. Just getting onto the sidebar. But anyway, this was fun. This is something you could get from your Strom Becker hobby kit, whether it's 24 scale or whatnot, and you turn it, and you decide how fast your lap is, and then you can know how fast your car is going in scale miles an hour or real miles an hour, that sort of thing. So pretty neat, pretty neat. Okay, what do we got in here? Ooh. All right, so here's a controller. This is a Strom Becker. And like I told you, this was kind of typical for the 1960s. They still had the 3 leads for, you know, your polarities and braking, but tiny wires. It just starting off, wasn't super into performance. And then your resistors like this. So you had a long way to go and real smooth application of the voltage, because these hard body slot cars, you had to drive like a real car. They weren't a light switch on off like a formula car with tons of stick, or these aero cars from a later time period. So you control it this way. And actually, if you get interested in old slot car books and whatnot, a real nice guy on the West Coast, Philippe de L'Espinay, he Electric Dreams, I think he was involved with, but big slot car guy, met him. There's just all kinds of neat history to slot car racing. There was even a time period where they had steering wheels and a gas pedal and such for young people to race, which was kind of neat. The steering wheel, I think you had to actually turn it to relate to the corner your slot car was in. Otherwise, if you didn't turn it properly, your gas pedal hooked to the voltage wouldn't work well. So there's an example of a thumb controller there, and we've got some more we'll get into. Okay, so let's start with the hard plastic guys. Watch me dump this out and destroy all my toys, right? That would suck. Okay, so you can tell already here I'm a big Chaparral fan, and I'm also wearing the hat, and I got some Lotuses over there. So let's start, oh gosh, I've got a bunch of things going on here. So this is a Chaparral 2A, ooh, and it's really corroded. Okay, so check that out. It's got Cox Magnesium Wheels, and this is all the corrosion from the magnesium. That is disappointing, ooh, man. Okay, so anyway, my toys that I restored a long time ago are now old again, boy. Anyway, so Chaparral 2A, this is a Strom Becker kit. Back when I was younger, a lot of these cars were real valuable because, you know, the baby boomers miss them, and then they got older and had a bunch of money and then collected them and drove the prices way up. So me as a young guy couldn't even afford the slot cars. Do you see a theme going on here? Anyway, so this is a Strom Becker, and it was never built, so I built it as nicely as I could, decals on perfectly, all the stickers exactly where they were on this iteration of Chaparral, of the 2A, before it had the big mustaches and the vents and such in the hood. Just real neat way to get into history. Of course, the zoomy headers and the big intakes on the electronic, or the, excuse me, mechanical fuel injection, or the Webers, depending. And, you know, it's got that kind of boring stamp Strom Becker chassis, which doesn't give you much torsion and performance, but it works really nice for having a plastic model, and it's very charming. And like I said, I put the Cox Magnesium Wheels on as sort of an upgrade. Strom Becker did a good job, but their driver sort of looks like Marshmallow Man from the Ghostbusters, so they didn't do that and scale too well. But overall, real nice presentation of that. So this one, this Chaparral, and all Chaparrals were worth way too much money back as a kid because all the older guys wanted them. So you can see here, there's that magnesium wheel corroding again. That's disappointing. I need to put some Decacent packets or something in there like my gun safe. And so the whole chassis is that way too. So Cox chassis, you'll slot cars guys will notice this is not a Cox body, it's a monogram. I'll get into that in a minute. But I got a Cox chassis here, and it's magnesium. Has the swing arm. Ooh, that is, man, jeez. Okay, so anyway, it has a swing arm that would move if it wasn't corroded to the moon and back right now. And the transverse motor. When I bought this chassis, I got it as an antique, and it actually came with this Ferrari GTO polycarbonate body on it, like that. And the body was beat. So I was at this model shop, I think it was called AutoZone in Detroit. It was actually named before the chain company. Anyway, so I bought this old junky slot car with this body and this chassis. And then at the same hobby shop, they had a monogram 24 scale Chaparral 2D kit. So I bought the monogram kit, like I said, it was the same as the 60s, and I made it really nice, detailed everything perfect, did the cockpit and all. And what was fun, like people did in the 60s, you can see the chassis parts here. I glued to the underside of the cockpit and back here where the transaxle would be, so I could pick up the 3 mounting points of the Cox chassis. You can see the epoxy and such has, gotten old and brown since when I did that. But I think the value is here for young people and car people and older people to remember and young people to know. The thing that was so amazing about 1960s slot cars and slot car building, all of these same techniques, understandings, ways of thinking is what goes into made me successful to build real cars. Real racing cars, the turbine-powered Batmobile you guys know of, my recycling fuel efficiency prototype. I learned all those skills back when building slot car models because I had to take a body that was hard plastic, that wasn't designed for this chassis, and then spatially consider it and build it in a way that would be strong and actually function as a racing model for this chassis. So this is great detail, craftsmanship, and engineering that leads to building real cars, a real neat thing. And it's a great lesson in history. So, I was like the only teenager in the 90s who gave a crap about Jim Hall Chaparrals. Another reason why I did that whole rant about baby boomer museums and the giant disconnect, because you guys forgot how to connect it. Don't hate me, it's true, okay? I know how to fix this. So anyway, here is a model, and it appears that it's broken. Because I raced it and didn't leave it on my shelf. What up? Oh God, I'm gonna make some slot car people mad now. This is actually really cool. This is a Chaparral 2E. And that was a time period where they were able to, in racing, have adjustable rear spoilers and front spoilers and aerodynamics and such. So you see this little wire here. I think you see that little wire that would connect to, yeah, here we go. That connects to the wing. I got to fix these stocks. So anyway, the wire connects to the wing, and when the wire pulls, the wing will either go to full downforce or braking, and then back to flat out when you're on a straight, which is really neat, and it actually works. Now, how that works is this is the Cox IFC Fulcrum Chassis, I believe. This came a little bit later. They got fast, they got low, they were really neat. And what's interesting, the guide flag swing arm was actually the whole chassis. So your guide flag is effectively on the same plane and connected to what the rear wheels are. And then the body, which is connected to this outer part and the front wheels, is what's able to move. So if you want to pop a wheelie or something, your chassis and your motor and everything stay down here, but the body and the wheels and everything can do this. So this one wasn't like a big wheelie car, but it was a really great way for it to float and keep the power down. Now, with regard to this little shaft here that would operate the wing going this way and that way, it did it by the torque of the motor. So when you accelerated, the motor would go like this, dink, like one way, right? And it would snap over and push the push rod to flatten out the wing. And then when you decelerate for braking effect, the push rod, the motor would tweak it over here and go the other direction, so it would go up and down to actuate that wing. Pretty neat. It looks really dramatic and cool on the track. Didn't really do anything for performance, but it was really exciting. And for the collectors that know, this is actually not an original Cox body. It was something somebody molded that I bought cheap off eBay because I was a young man and couldn't afford the cars because you made them too expensive and you just stuck them in your collections. Do you see the theme here? Slot cars versus real cars is the same thing. So anyway, so I did this so I could actually use it and have fun with it and make a mold. That's the other reason why replicas of race cars in the past are pretty darn important nowadays in real life, because all the older people who got rich collected them and hoarded them and collected dust, and nobody ever sees the light of day or goes racing. So at least if you make a replica, you might actually see it out racing now and then, which is also funny because I know a few people that have some of the most valuable cars on the planet, but they're actual real car guys and drive them on the track. But I get tangent. So anyway, so these two cars are interesting for what it was in the 60s. Looks like my windscreen popped off this one. I don't know if I didn't glue it on or it popped off. So you can see the windscreen for this Lotus 3040. There, goes on there. Looks like I need to fix that sometime. Maybe I didn't use the right glue. And then it has the cover here for the Webers on the V8 that would be in it, if you can see that. So anyway, so this model is a Strom Becker, like my Cheetah there was, and it was less expensive when I had a hard time affording it because it wasn't as collectible, but I really like that and I really wanted that in my collection. Now this one is effectively the same car, the same real car model, but this was done by Cox. And they're very famous and they're worth a lot of money. It has the magnesium chassis like we spoke about in the other ones. And I later got this one. I know this was like old days of like pioneering internet. But I literally put a flyer out at the local barbershop of like, I'd like to buy 60 slot cars. And an older guy, I bought this car from him and a controller and something else. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so here's a Cox Lotus 3040, which is a very popular model kit back then. Here's a Strom Becker, effectively the same car. You know, the Cox has a nicer interior detailing, little nicer detailing the whole way around, honestly. The models are not exactly the same of the exact same original car, so you can see the exhaust here versus there. So they're replicating different but similar cars. So just want to show you that with two different manufacturers of what it's like. But if you're just getting into collecting, you can find some nice cars like this. Maybe they didn't perform quite as well or a little less well known and collectible and have something really cool for less money. So just an example of a couple of Lotus 30s here of different manufacturers. Man, this is bad. Okay, I need to figure out a way to preserve these. I did not know that magnesium would corrode so badly in here. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so I've got some fun things going on here. I'll come back to this one. You don't see it there. So here's another thumb controller made by Cox. This is a little prettier. It's got kind of that cool ruby red plastic. And then the controller here, a little bit better quality the whole way around than that Strom Becker. And I've actually still used this controller just to be nostalgic, even though I hate using my thumb because my thumb's dumb, my trigger finger's a lot smarter. You can make any jokes you want about America, I don't care. Anyway, so here is my open wheel collection. So let's just start with the real cars, so to speak, before the ones I built. Pretty sure this is a K&B. Ooh, I'm gonna drop it. I'm gonna break in my toys, like Antique Roadshow. Okay, so K&B, I'm pretty sure this company is the same as this Ford GT, and they kind of look similar, which is sort of neat. Same company here, right? Hard plastic, pretty good detail. It was a smaller company and wasn't the most sought after by collectors, so I was able to buy this pretty reasonably. It's also interesting because the plastic is sculpted the whole way around, which makes for a prettier model, but maybe not as well as performing. Got an inline motor and chassis in here. Everything's really nicely screwed, so it's got really nice details, actually. And even goes so far as to have the 4-link rear suspension pieces here and a piano wire that connects to the body and then goes over the stationary part of the axle. So I think that's a really nice detail. It's got some foam tires here. They still got a little bit of grip and a good detail all around. When I got it, the decal was put on nicely back in the 60s. The cockpit wasn't detailed, so I really carefully with a teeny tiny brush just finished off the cockpit nicely. And I think that's a great representation of that early to mid 60s Formula car racing. So this one's probably the most valuable one of my collection in terms of the Formula cars. And gosh, I can't remember, is it Monogram? It's Monogram, I think. That's right. So this is the model of Jimmy Clark's Lotus 38 that won the Indy 500 in 1965. It's made by Monogram, and this is probably the nicest detailed kit of that time. You know, it's really pretty with a bundle of snakes, kind of headers in yellow going off the Ford 4-cam engine. There's some issues with it, of course. The kid that made it in the 60s put on the scoops for the intakes on backwards. They're actually supposed to point the other direction, but it still looks pretty good. And it's missing a mirror, which is kind of a shame, but detailed the cockpit nicely and whatnot. Oh, and also this stripe back here is not supposed to go transverse. It's supposed to go inline like the rest of this, but still looks really good, and I was excited to get it. There are not a whole lot of these. Really pretty decals put on the side. The inserts here, which just fell out a second ago. Let's see. So they're aluminum wheels with sponge tires, and then you have these plastic inserts to do the Lotus's typical 4-spoke knockoff wheels. Goes in here. I'm not sure if all of them are remakes, these little pieces here or not, but they were missing on the model, so I finished it off to be more proper there. But I think this is just so cool that people got to make this back when, and such a great hobby. It's got the drop swing arm here with the guide flag inline motor, so not a huge performer, but a really great looking model that I'm sure was really popular in 1965 and 1966. So the other two cars, I actually concocted. This one, oh, looks like I broke it. What do you know? Big kids and little kids break stuff. So this is a plastic model. I think it might have been I don't remember if it was a Revell or monogram of a Dan Gurney Eagle from the same time period of the mid-60s. The headers broke off, as you can see here. And I bought this kit just to make around a slot car. And I think I took one of those inline chassis. There's got to be one around here somewhere. Okay, whatever. So I took this kind of cheap inline chassis and I built the model around it. So it'd be really hard to take apart actually, and it's got a little weight here. But the model does okay, and I had fun doing it as a younger person because this is before I got my monogram Lotus 38. But you can see, you can still have a lot of fun. So if you can't afford a real collectible one like this, you can just make your own from one of those kits and get crafty. And the performance is going to be basically the same. And they look just as good. So, you know, whatever. There's clever ways to have a lot of fun without breaking the bank. And building something like this is going to make you a much smarter engineer and craftsman. I just have to find my header pipes that are broken off with that right there. Okay, so this next one, I actually raced in that vintage race with my buddy. Oh, and the chassis that's buried inside this one that I built is like the same, I think, as what's in this one. So something pretty rudimentary. Anyway, this one I built for the Grand Prix vintage racing class that we did way back when. I got my butt kicked because the guy that owned the hobby shop just built one like modern times with a better motor and just smoked us all. But it looked great. And then I decided to just make it pop a sweet wheelie going down the back straightaway. So I won style points. What up? Anyway, this is a vacuum form body, which is nice because it... hope I don't break it here. It's flexible, and I made it so it just sort of breaks. Just sort of snaps right off of the chassis there. As you can see it, just vacuum form. You can still get these very inexpensively. You might spend $5 or $10 on a body unpainted. And then I'm pretty sure this is solder. I took solder and bent it. I don't think it's a piano wire. It looks kind of soft. Just to be rudimentary looking suspension pieces. Yeah, that's definitely solder. It's real soft. And I even drilled holes in this BRM in the intakes on that horizontally opposed motor. I think they were back then. Cool little driver, and hand painted my name on it because, you know, why wouldn't you do that? And then this chassis, it's got a basic little spring thing for the drop swing arm. But the motor's pretty rudimentary, as you can see. This is the weird kind that has the magnets up front and then has big steel pieces that go around the side to carry the magnetism to act like magnets. So it's like a remote magnet, which is kind of neat because you move the weight up front, but it's just not as effective or inefficient. So this is not a real powerful motor, but it's kind of neat to see the brushes exposed here. You can see this moving. That's one of the brushes at the top, the other one's at the bottom. And so you got your armature here with your commutator, and then it just goes over for the pinion on that side to your crown gear. And that's kind of neat. So I made this with my Grand Prix car, and at the time period with what I had available to me to build a car with, I didn't have the jigs, I didn't know how to make those brass chassis, I didn't have amazing soldering irons. I was a college kid, right? This was the only chassis that I had available to myself that I could afford because all that stuff got collectible that I knew could fit in a body. So I thought I did a pretty good job, and it's a good looking car. So, you know, why not? Okay, let's get down to the thingies. I think they're thingies. Yeah, they're thingies, and they're polycarbonate. So real slot car collectors of the 60s, they all like the hard plastic ones. That's kind of the purest ones, the prettiest. If you crash them, they break. But thingies are super fun. The polycarbonate ones at the time period. This one actually was my dad's when he was a kid. He'll probably get all grumpy and be like, I want my toy back right now. Sorry, Dad, I got it. And it's actually teaching right now. So it can sit on your shelf in the attic and collect dust and do nothing, Dad, or it can teach with. I'm not just speaking to my dad, I'm speaking to all the dads out there. I'm urging you to, share these things that matter with young people, whether it's your kids or not. Anyway, this is a BZ Banshee. Really cool looking thing. I mean, that is super cool. That is cooler than a Batmobile, isn't it? And this is the kind of stuff that inspired me as a kid to automotive design. And I just think it's so cool. Look, I mean, look at this thing. That is badass. Can you imagine that ripping down a track? And BZ had these neat stamped steel chassis, really pretty. They're chromed, got the Sidewinder motor, these neat louvers in here, and this piano wire drop flag here. When I got this what was left of this that I remember from my dad, it was pretty beat up. I don't know, from him playing it with his little kid and me playing with it as a little kid. The tires and wheels were gone. Tires were all shot from being from the 60s, and the guide flag was gone, probably so you could play with it as a little kid and you don't have a track. So later, when I got older, I had to find wheels, BZ looking wheels, paint them to match, find tires and such. The front tires are actually O-rings I got from the hardware store, which is pretty cool. And then I had to make a new wire guide flag drop there to fix it up. And so that's how I fixed it up. It looks really good. So BZ Banshee, pretty neat. BZ also made a Batmobile, of the 60s George Barris Batmobile. It's really collectible. I didn't really like the 60s Batmobile. I mean, it's kind of campy. I watched reruns when I was a kid or whatever, but I didn't love it enough to want to collect a Batmobile, which is worth too much money. All right, what else we got here? We're narrowing it down. Gosh, who made this? Oh, I can't even remember. I do remember this model super rare because it was a chrome Lola T70 Mark I. And this is the way it was back when. It was chrome. Had this neat chassis, aluminum. And what's also cool is foam tires that were coated in silicone. So it has tremendous grip, but the flexibility and lightweightness of foam. So that was pretty cool, right? Got the Sidewinder motor and the whole chassis up here with the tires and the guide flag move, which is pretty neat. Got to move these brushes over. There's probably collectors that are all mad at me right now. Oh, you shouldn't keep it a box. That's why corroding. You're an idiot. Anyway, so this can undulate and the car works effectively like suspension back when. This is a really collectible model. I can't remember the manufacturer or the name of it. So if you guys remember what my chrome Lola T70 is, comment below. But be nice, please, okay? All right, this one's super collectible. I think I got this at an antique shop in Tiffin, like a baseball card trading place. Funky chassis. Maybe not the best for performance because it's not real low. Of course, it's got the cool drop swing arm with the guide flag on. You can pop wheelies, big motor, kind of center high gravity. So this is sort of a hot rod, I would call it. Of course, it's a good looking Cobra in a candy apple red. And slot car bodies, I don't know if you can see the metallic there, since they come clear, and you can see the windshield's still clear, they come clear, you paint them from the inside, so you can do some really beautiful candy apple colors and things back then. And I think this is the way a lot of kids that got into hot rodding and car building got started. So really great thing there. So I got another car here, a Mako Shark, what up? Corvette, Mako Shark C3, late 60s thingy, polycarbonate. Cool chassis, got a smaller drop swing arm. This is plastic. They started cheaping out a little bit towards the late 60s and 70s. You know, manufacturing, we want our profit margins to be good, that kind of thing. So maybe not the best model in the world, but decent, probably more mass produced. Has an adjustable, you can see here these screws, an adjustable wheelbase, so it could have been used on different cars. Manufacturers did that a lot back then. You'd have a chassis throughout your whole line. So like Cox had their Magnesium one for all their Chaparrals and Lotus 30s and stuff. And you know, BZ had the same chassis in a little red wagon as you did in like a BZ Banshee or the Batmobile. Here, interesting thing. Oh, wait, that's not right. The Little Red Wagon was different, I think. Forgive me. That reminds me, I used to have a really cool Little Red Wagon slot car, but on the first year of Genius Garage, I was trying to teach everybody how you can actually get something nice, fix it up, sell it for more, and keep trading up. So I used it as an example and did a contest, and I sold my Little Red Wagon to prove a point to them and do that. So I no longer have my Little Red Wagon anymore. Whatever. But hopefully some people learned something. Anyway, so there's that thingy, the Mako Shark Corvette. This one's fairly collectible. I don't remember if it's worth a bunch or not. I don't really care. And I can't even remember who made it. But inline, cheap chassis, adjustable wheelbase with different holes for the front wheels you can see there. And I think this was like a Corvair like prototype concept or something because it looks sort of rear engine to me. I don't remember. It's just neat. Reflects the time period of 60s. There's loads of great prototypes and things. And again, forgive me for not remembering what all these things were. I haven't dug this stuff out in years. And I sort of gotten away from, I hate to say this, but I sort of got away from caring about this because, you know, I was like the youngest guy who cared about any of this stuff. And I actually utilized slot cars to teach with Genius Garage, but nobody does anything with them anymore. And nobody brings out the old stuff at a track in public because they're too valuable. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, how can you drive that old thing that we coveted from our childhood? You might break it and take it out of the box. Like, because that's what a racing model is for, is to race. So that's what I'm going to do. But I sort of just lost interest, so I forgot all this stuff. But I still love it, so don't hate me. Okay, so this one, yeah, here we are. So this chassis is the same as this Cobra over here, same manufacturer. But as you can see, totally different body. So here it's a Cobra, and here it's a, what the heck is this? Sort of looks like a Ferrari in a funky blue color. I don't know. Kind of looks like that Ferrari from the time period of Le Mans history where they had big ugly windshields and stuff. Like early 60s, early mid-engine car. And his little head fell off. I never detailed the interior because you have to paint the clear part. Was it K&B? I don't remember. I should look up Philippe's book right now. He'll probably get mad at me for not knowing. But anyway, that's kind of the stuff. What else did I keep in here? Oh, there's the knickknacks. You know, these are braids and gears and guide flags and stuff. My old screwdriver and old pairs of pliers and tools. This is something I like. You know, when I grew up, I grew up using old tools that have been sitting around for probably 100 years like this. I can't even read what this is. You know, from the corrosion and people using it. It's just got that neat patina. It looks kind of Amish, doesn't it? But that's kind of the tools I grew up using when I was a kid with things. So just remember, it's not the tools that make the mechanic or the craftsman. It's the mechanic or craftsman that make the tools, right? Of course, some tools just suck. Here's my tires and wheels for the Cheetah here. These are actually like the scale ones that should go on here with the skinny rubber. I don't know if you can see that. And then I put these big foam ones on because they let you do it in the rules. You know it wasn't period correct. That's actually a fun example of how vintage racing as a real hobby, real race cars, goes wrong too. So I did this as totally period correct and really nice. So this slot car, so that would refer to like what Monterey is supposed to be, or the VSCCA, you know, the people that are real purists with vintage racing, keeping the cars exactly as they were. But then there's other sanctioning bodies that allow more flexibility or frankly more cheating. They let it just get away with it. I don't want to say, oh, screw it. The SVRA, I'm sorry, and the HSR. People end up making giant motors for their cars and putting on big tires because their egos get bruised. And instead of racing like the time period like you're supposed to, they just want to race and win all the time and feel good. So that's what happens. You get too big of motors and too big of brakes and too big of tires in it. And they like don't really enforce it. So same thing happens to slot cars. So I guess where I'm going with this is I'm a big fan of being a purist, but giving just enough flexibility for safety and reliability and stuff like that. But if you have to put a giant motor in your vintage racing car or vintage slot car or giant tires and you don't give a crap about the rules just because your ego bruised if you don't win rather than have a nice race, then you're a crappy sportsman. Don't hate me. Now, I said the HSR and the SVRA. I will say I like both of those sanctioning bodies a lot, but this is my channel and I'm gonna tell the truth. So if you don't like it, then let's do something about it for the future, okay? Don't get mad at me. Or get mad at me, whatever. It'll be a fun YouTube video in the future. This is old 1999 vintage Sportsman Classic Concore. So I won this black, and I was so proud of it. 1999, I was in high school. And this was for my Cheetah, I think. Yeah, my Cheetah, that red one I showed you, the other one that I built and raced with people in the other. And that was kind of fun. My old slot car box that I used to race with, I gave it away to one of my Genius Garage students in the past and some of my 32nd scale slot cars. He really loved the Ferrari 512 model I had and my GT40. He's a really nice kid, so I just gave them to him. I mean, they're in my collection. He was all taken aback, but I'm like, you know, why don't you enjoy this? And then I had a lot of extra scale extra track, enough to make a whole track and controllers and stuff, so I just gave it to him because he really enjoyed it, and he'll race slot cars, and maybe he'll pass on that hobby. So, you know, if you've got slot cars not doing anything that aren't going to change your life if you have them or not, maybe share them with some young people who care, whether they're related to you or not. I think that makes the future better, and I think that lets the hobby continue. So, you know, maybe words of wisdom for lots of things in life, everybody. But that's it. Those are my old-timey slot cars, and I should probably find a way to store them better so that my magnesium wheels of my Lotus... Actually, this is funny. I got to tell you. So there's the Lotus 38, right? And here is... Yeah, check this out. So here's my magnesium wheels corroding like crazy in the magnesium chassis, right? And these magnesium wheels, it's a joke. These used to be really pretty because Chaparral was the first, Jim Hall was the first to come up with that lace pattern, and then BBS wheels are effectively a knockoff of Chaparral wheels. Now I'm gonna get BBS mad at me. Whatever, you guys came later. Chaparral did it first. So where I'm going with this is the real Lotus 38, I think, is up in the Henry Ford exhibit or museum or whatever in Michigan. And I heard that it wasn't preserved right. And because Indy cars run alcohol, the alcohol was sitting in the engine long enough, what got by the piston rings, that it sat down in the magnesium pan and engine and ruined the engine over the years, just like my slot cars are getting ruined right now. So I guess I can't talk smack about the museum because my slot cars are going to pot. But yeah, your car's worth a lot more than my slot cars. So maybe, you know, preserve that better. Or if you're not going to do anything with it and just let it rot, then, you know, maybe let somebody fix it up and do some exhibition laps in it, because we can teach better that way. So that's all I got, guys. Here's my vintage ones. I actually have other scales and other crazy boxes from my past in the attic. So if you guys are total freaks and want to see this stuff, comment and maybe I'll do a video. And if it gets enough views, I'll keep going. Whatever. Why not? Be like Casey's weird past American Pickers. That's all I got for now. I hope you guys will like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.